Well, hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Getting ready for Mike in the Midwest 145. Let's do it. Give me some slack here. Mute my phone. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 145 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find us on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, where you find your great podcast, but you know that because you're a patron. And I hope you join us on Sunday nights for the live call-in show, because that is your opportunity every single week to be a part of the show. You can put in some comments in the chat as we talk about the news of the week. We talked about Murphy the Dragon out at Disneyland, the Phantasmic show, have the fire last week. We had the comments on that. We talked about Fort Wilderness turning into a DVC resort. We had comments on that. And of course, you can always call in and lend your voice to the podcast every week, which we really appreciate. It's fun because when I started the podcast over 15 years ago, the name of the show is not an accident. It's called Be Our Guest because I always wanted to have guests on the show. I always thought it would be cool to have a podcast where I get to talk, but I always thought that, as a listener, it would be fun to be a part of the show myself if I ever had the opportunity. So every week on Mondays, we always have a guest on the show. So the show is actually kind of, it's a back and forth with our listeners and us, the panelists, and it's all of our show. You can come on the show and be our guest. And the Sunday night show is an opportunity where you don't have to wait months and months to share a trip report. You can come right there any Sunday night, give us a holler on the phone, talk about the current news, give a quick trip report if you just got back. And I love that because I love getting to build that community and talk about what is important to you and just hear your take on things. Because with all things, especially Disney, there's so many different perspectives on news. I'm not real hot on those new designs of the cabins, but a lot of folks are. I'm just kind of more of a traditionalist when it comes to I think cabins should look like Abe Lincoln lived in them. But I understand that new aesthetic is very trendy and they are kind of neat looking. They got the colors and the lots of windows. They're pretty cute, but I don't know. I say leave Fort Wilderness alone, but again, I'm like the old man saying, get off my yard. So anyway, I hope you're having a great week and hope this podcast finds you well and that we're all doing well. Right now it's 65 and sunny outside the Be Our Guest Podcast Studios window right here. So things are pretty good today. And of course, if you've been following my social media, it has been a really good past few days. And we have just been doing really good here. You probably saw Mallory made varsity cheerleading for Francis Howell High School for next year. So I'm super proud of her, super excited. She has worked super hard over the past months and months to get herself prepared for these tryouts, which are super stressful. If you guys were high school athletes, you probably remember that. I remember when I tried out for baseball when I was in high school eons ago. I just remember the first day of tryouts. 125 guys tried out and they were keeping 17 for the freshman team. And I just remember looking down the line as we played catch and you could not see the other end of, because, you had two guys, like you had a guy across from you, right? Because you're playing catch. So you had half that, but it was like all the way down. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. And immediately I started doubting myself. Like, I'm not going to make this team. This mathematically, what are the odds? But I mean, I knew I had gone through Little League and stuff and was a pretty decent player and I had a good chance. And I'd played Legion ball in 8th grade. So I had a pretty good chance because I was playing against guys that were in, juniors and seniors when I was an 8th grader. But I still mentally started freaking out because of how many people were there. And so I was glad that, Mallory persevered. Of course, she had her doubts. We had many emotional nights here around the house over the past couple of weeks, but she made it through. And it'll be exciting for her mom and I, and hopefully Paige will be able to get down for a game or two from Chicago to watch the football games on Friday nights at the H in the fall, and also, basketball in the wintertime and all the stuff that goes along with that. So we're super excited for her. It's one of those things. You just want your kids to succeed and be happy. And I hope this is something that gives her the opportunity to do so. Also, last night, my older daughter, Paige, this is dad brag time, so sorry about this, but Paige, of course, she's the director of basketball operations for the University of Illinois Chicago women's basketball. Fire up Flames. They had something which I think is very cool, and I found out Mizzou was having the exact same thing last night. They had it was almost like the ESPYs, which is kind of like the Oscars or the Grammys, like an award show, but it was further they rented out a big banquet room. It was everybody dressed up. It was for all the athletes at the University of Illinois Chicago. So all the athletes dressed up. It looked like it was in a hotel ballroom. They had a DJ, they had a nice dinner, lights and all kinds. It looked like a prom or something. Because I saw it on social media. Anyway, they gave out awards, and they call them the Sparkies because that's the name of their mascot because of the Flames. Cute, right? So anyway, they gave out, the best male athlete of the year, best female athlete of the year. Well, I'm super proud that the team of the year for the University of Illinois Chicago was the women's basketball team, and the coach of the year was the women's basketball coach. And so, my daughter was a part of that too. So, as you start to get older, your victories come through your kids. And I'm not even so, it's not even so much that they're getting recognized and getting, these achievements. It's more that they're happy. Right. And those of you that are parents, you just want your kids to be happy. Like if you'd asked me 5 years ago with Paige, because she has a degree in biochemistry from Mizzou. And so I would have guessed her life would have looked a lot different. I thought she'd be, working in a lab or, doing something in the STEM fields because that's where her degree was. She's super, super smart, but she's running an athletic program. And I think that's something I would love to do. She's living my dream, but she is absolutely happy. I didn't know how she would adapt to Chicago. Chicago's a big city. It's a big, expensive city compared to somebody who's grown up in the suburbs of St. Louis. It's a lot different, but she's adapting like a fish to water. And I'm so proud of her. She's really doing it, and she's a young woman. She's her own person. And, Mallory, God, I was thinking about this, she made varsity. She'll be a sophomore next year, but holy cow, in 3 years, she'll be out of here. And then my wife and I'll be empty nesters. How did that happen? I feel like I just got out of high school myself just, the other day. So I don't know. Life moves quickly, and I just love having you guys as a sounding board. And I wonder if you have these same kind of feelings, right? If all of a sudden it's not about you, it's about your kids. I love the podcast, and I love being able to be at Walt Disney World or Disneyland, or even, it's happened on a cruise even. People come up and say, "Hey, are you Mike? Do you do the show?" And it fills my heart when people come up and ask to get a picture, to say hi. That's awesome, because I still can't believe people listen to our show. It's hot. I just love that when people come, it's like, there's a real life person listen to the show. But when your kids have the success, it's pretty awesome. So I just want to brag on them for a few minutes. But that's what's been going on around here this week on the shows. We're lucky. We have Pam and Ricky joining us for both shows. Wednesday, we have listener questions. We have some really good ones. We have a really cool predicament. We had a question on the Wednesday show. There's a guy that wrote in, and it's him and his wife. His wife works in a high school. She's a counselor, and they can only travel next February 2024. And I'm guessing it's probably during President's Day week, because he said it's when she's out of school. So I'm guessing it's that week. They have a 1.5-year-old baby that was just, this will be her first trip. The grandparents are also going, the wife's parents. And he was asking, should we go to Walt Disney World or should we go on a cruise? I lean toward the cruise. Pam leaned toward the cruise, and Ricky kind of was closer to Walt Disney World. But, I think we talked about how the cruise has a capped capacity. There's only so many staterooms, only so many people. And I like the cruise because the grandparents probably get to spend more quality time with the new grandbaby. But I wonder what your thoughts would be with that. So listen to the show on tomorrow. That's listener questions. But it was one of those things I didn't know what the right answer was. I kind of stewed on it as I edited the show afterwards. Did I give the right answer? Because they're huge Disney fans. They're huge Walt Disney World fans. His wife performed at Walt Disney World, and you'll hear the details on the show tomorrow. She had some pretty cool experiences at Walt Disney World. You may have seen her. You probably did. I'm sure I did. Um, and so, you want to go back for nostalgia reasons, right? You want to go back and experience those things with your daughter that to the place where you were. But I just think overall, the cruise might be the answer for that busy President's Day week. But I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So that's going to be one of the shows for this week. And then on Friday's podcast, I thought about doing one more draft because the draft for the NFL is Thursday night and then Friday and Saturday. And I just like using the let's see if I can find it. Sound right there. Cause you'll hear that a lot this weekend if you watch the draft, because that's the official sound. But no, we didn't do a draft. So what we did was we did a show because I wanted to be I try to throw in shows on Fridays that are worthwhile, not just fun, not just fluff. And so what we did was we really dove deep into the My Disney Experience app. Of course, off the top of the show, we talked about how to take your new reservation, link it, how to make theme park reservations using the app itself, how to make ADRs using the app itself. But then we really dove into the app and talked about how you can use there's a geographical locator button on there that you can, look at maps and see like wait times. You can use all these filtering options. You can look at wait times on top of dining locations, on top of where current PhotoPass photographers are. You can wipe out any of those filters. You can just do PhotoPass photographers. Then instead, if you don't want to see a map, you could do a list. If you're just more of a list person and you like it that way, that's how your brain works. We talked about that. We talked about some sweet filters that are within the app you can have fun with. Some of them are geo fence, so you got to use them at Walt Disney World. About half of them you can use back home. We talked about using the app to unlock your resort room. You don't have to use your magic band or your room key. You can actually use the app itself to unlock your door. My biggest thing that people are not using enough is mobile order checkout. You can use the app to just purchase things. In some of the stores, the bigger stores like the Emporium, Creation Shop over at Epcot. You can use it at the expos at the Run Disney events. You just take the app and push a couple buttons. You scan the barcode on the tag, that tells the price. And then you just walk over to this person who's manning a little kiosk by the exit. And they're like, okay, you paid for it because it's connected to your credit card. And they gave you a little bag and you're out of there. I mean, it's the greatest thing ever. You don't have to get in line. Oh man, it's like mobile order was before COVID when nobody was using it except like you. And you thought you were like, you were all that because nobody else knew that it was going on. Now everybody has to use it. So it's not as cool. We also found a cool little thing in there that you can connect to Advent Health if you get sick, and it'll connect you to nearby doctors. It can help you get prescriptions delivered to your hotel room at Walt Disney World. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in there. Give cast compliments. So we talk about that on Friday. So hopefully you'll find a nugget or two that'll help you get more value out of that My Disney Experience app. Maybe it'll help you on your next trip. We're always trying to help you out. It's hard because especially you guys that are the patrons, you guys know more about Walt Disney World probably than I do. You guys are super fans, but I always want to give value. And I have to also remember, and I hope you guys appreciate this, is that our listenership, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads for every podcast. And while a lot of us go to Walt Disney World a lot and have a lot of background knowledge, there's still quite a few people, I'm sure, that listen to our show that maybe it's their first time trip or second time, and the first time was 7 years ago, pre-COVID. So I try to always keep that kind of stuff in mind, that there are people out there listening that maybe don't even know that you got to link your reservation to your My Disney Experience account. You got to start at the basics for a little bit. It's kind of that fine line you got to walk. You got to give some basics, but you don't want to bore everybody. But we try to do that on Friday. We go over the basics for about the first 10 minutes, and then we really dive into like stuff that, did you know this was here? This is pretty sweet. So hopefully you'll get something out of that on Friday. Okay, so let's hit the feedback from last week's show. And last week we talked about pushing through and then stickers from childhood. And my good friend Len out in Maryland, Sparty Up, says, hey, Mike, being 10 years older than you, I've already dealt with the realization that age has a big effect on my physical activity. I'm a bicyclist. I used to log about 4,000 miles a year. We have a very well-used bicycle trail that makes a complete loop around BWI Airport just behind my house. I used to be the king of the trail about 15 years ago. Some may be able to pass me in a sprint, but few could stay ahead of me for the entire 11-mile loop. However, age caught up with me, and now I have to deal with an almost continuous heart arrhythmia. I had to make a mental adjustment that I can no longer compete with others on the trail and just need to ride my own ride and know that as I age, things get things get sore easier. I have learned to listen to my body and make sure not to push so hard that it increases the lingering pains. That's important because I want to continue to ride, and if there's too much pain, I won't be able to. That's a good point because last week I kind of talked about how, I'm trying to continue to put in the miles that I did 5 years ago with running and trying to keep the paces that I did, 3 years ago, but it's getting harder and it's killing me. I'm going to be 50 this fall or, Thanksgiving. And I still feel like I'm 20. I mean, my body hurts all the time. Don't get me wrong. But mentally, I feel young. I still feel like I'm, high school, college in my mind, but I'm trying to push through. But Len's exactly right. I mean, that's a good attitude to have that, you don't, because the thing is, when you go to these Run Disney races, I try to run with everybody. And sometimes I'm trying to run with people that are like in their 20s and 30s and just, I can't do it. Like, I mean, that's physics. Like these people are young. They've got the youth. I don't have that. I got old rickety bones. But yeah, that's a good point. If you're sore, you're not going to do it. So that's a good point, Len. I'm going to keep that. And always just compete with yourself. I've always heard that, but I'm also kind of stubborn. George, my good friend out of Washington State by way of Hawaii, says, Aloha, Mike. I feel you when you said you get lonely for your family on a solo trip at Disney. Back in November 2023, well, I guess he meant 2022 since that hasn't happened yet. I got sent to a work training in Irvine, California for a week. On the last day, the training ended early to allow people to get to the airport and fly back home. But since I was living in Hawaii at the time, my flight wasn't until the next day, so I bought a one-day park admission ticket to Disneyland. I got to the park at 4 p.m. and had the time of my life. If I recall the night correctly, I got on about 18 attractions, had a sit-down dinner, and saw Fantasmic. R.I.P. Murphy, the dragon. I had the time of my life, but it was the first time I've been in the park during the Christmas holiday time. When I was outside, It's a Small World, and they started to blast a Christmas song and made it snow, I almost lost it. I fought hard to hold back the tears because at that moment, all I could think of was having my wife and daughter with me. You're getting me, George, because that is me. That is so me. Like, it is awesome being in the parks by yourself because you just get to do whatever you want. You move so quickly. I mean, it's like an all-star day. You do whatever. I mean, nobody's going to bark at you if you just want to have that grilled cheese sandwich that I like, or you want to have corn dog nuggets. Nobody cares. Have it. Nobody's barking at you, but God, you're so right, man. I know I'm like choking it back because yeah, Mallory and I are huge Christmas fans, and like if something came on like that, I'd be like, Mal, she's not here. Yeah, the same thing. I love George. I got to spend time with George on a cruise. It was great. He continues with pushing through. For me, I see it more with golf than anything else. When I was younger, I used to walk and carry my bag on my shoulders. I also used to hit the ball a country mile. Now I walk with a push cart for my clubs because my back can't take it anymore. And I noticed how much shorter I hit the ball. I get frustrated a lot because in my mind, I remember hitting it further. I have older golf buddies who told me they have only stamina for 9 holes now, not 18. Scotty G, enjoy this time as this is your peak time, my friend. For stickers as a kid, I love the scratch and sniff. As an adult today, it's about the vinyl stickers for my truck, hydro flask, and laptop. Either anything Hawaiian or Disney to allow me to reflect my personality. George, great comments. Thank you so much, buddy. I miss seeing you. And let me just tell you, my Jeep rocks a lizard sticker still from George in Hawaii. And every time I see it on my bumper on the back end of my Jeep, I think of George, my good friend in Hawaii. Now it's in Washington. But it just makes me think of my friend. And I love that. Thanks, George. Dennis down in Texas says, I remember stickers being the biggest craze back when I was in second and third grade. I was particularly fond of some Star Wars stickers. How did I know Dennis would be fond of Star Wars stickers? That I had collected in my sticker book. I also remember Smurfs, which were puffy, being something of a prestige sticker at the time. Also, Scratch and Sniff was huge. The goal was to get those before the scent faded out. I hadn't thought about that in years. I haven't been going out of my way to collect stickers these days, but I have been collecting some that I get while traveling in a journal. The excursion stickers from Disney that you get from the Disney Cruise Line when you check in for a cruise have been some of my favorites. I'll check that out. I didn't know they did that. Dennis says, as for struggling with getting things done these days, I feel your pain. These days, I feel like I can get 2/3 of my daily to-do list done. If I get 2/3 of my to-do list done, I've had a productive day. This same list would have been an easy knockout not so long ago. In my case, I sometimes feel like my patience with the mundane tasks of the day has evaporated, and that's what holds me back. I think we need to start a club, guys. Len, George, Dennis, Mike, we're all in the club right now. I can see it. We need to get t-shirts. I love it. We're gonna make it through. We're just not moving as quickly as we used to, but we're not giving up. I love you guys. Thanks, Dennis. Has great feedback. Nicole's jumping in here. Sticker books were the best. Smelly stickers, garbage pail kid stickers, puffy stickers, and those cool stickers that were from the quarter machines that my mom refused to buy me were the greatest. Such a time to be a kid. Yeah, remember those things like at the end of Target or Venture or Kmart? They had the little what are those things called? Like little plastic domes that you'd have to kind of crack open there, and they'd have a sticker like a bouncy ball or something. And those are the greatest. They had a name. When I went to the Cosmic Rewind media event, they had a bunch of those machines there, and they served cheesecake in those little things. I'll have to find the video because I took video of it. I thought it was so retro. Nicole continues. I always read trip reports from solo travelers and I get envious. But on the other hand, the thought of going to Walt Disney World without my 8-year-old twin girls seems like a trip wasted. I only get so many years to see their eyes light up at fireworks or watch them laugh uncontrollably while going around sharp turns on Big Thunder. One day, my husband and I will enjoy lounges and lazy days at the pool. For now, it's quick service and constant movement, and that's okay with me. Oh my gosh, Nicole, print that out and put that on a wall. That is so well said as a parent, right? Because I'm so close to that. That's what I'm just talking about. Like in 3 years, Mallory will be gone. Like she will be off at Mizzou or who knows the way the wind blows. She doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. She has like 7 schools she wants to go to. They're all like SEC schools. She wants Ole Miss, Alabama. She doesn't know. But I mean, the fact is, she'll probably be away to school in like 3 years. And then Pam and I'll be like, what happened? Like, we've had kids here in the house forever. And now what do we do? And that'll be the time that we have the opportunity to go sit in a lounge or, lounge by the pool. But that's going to be an adjustment because our life is nonstop. Like we've been taking Mallory to private tumbling lessons for the last like month, almost daily for tryouts for high school cheer. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, but that is put it on the wall, right? Enjoy it while you have it because it'll be gone before you know it. That is so well said, Nicole. Solo trips are great, but man, take the kids when you can. That's perfect. And finally, Trisha, who I think is going to be going to Walt Disney World in October, says, confession. I hardly ever get to take solo trips. She says 2 in my life so far, but one was to Disney World, and I never once got lonely or wished my family was there. Okay. All right. I like it. Mike, pushing through gets harder because of aging. Don't beat yourself up. Biologically, your muscles become less elastic, leading to tightness and slower recovery. There's no magic pill or special superfood you can eat to reverse this. Since recovering from an injury, things have really been put into perspective for me. Sometimes pushing through leads to more damage. I'm still working on accepting the aging process, but I'd rather push to than push through so I can stand literally to push another day. That's a good thing, Trisha. Push to instead of pushing through. But I'm a stubborn old SOB. When it comes to stuff like this, I don't listen. I'm terrible. I am awful. Yeah. I remember in college. Okay, so I was no, I almost said professional. I was an amateur speed skater in the early 90s when inline speed skating was all the rage. And I was nationally ranked at the time. And they were thinking about making inline speed skating an Olympic sport. Okay, so they were in negotiations with roller skating to make inline speed skating an Olympic sport. And the deal is they have to go through all these governing bodies. And I was kind of in on all this because I managed a skating rink, and our owner of our skating rink was a very well connected person in the roller skating industry. because he had won nationals in speed skating, and he was one of the very first people to kind of get roller hockey off the ground. Anyway, for speed skating to get into the Olympics, roller speed skating is a summer sport. And remember, there's some weird summer sports that get in. The thing is, it has to be popular in X amount of countries around the world. And inline skating was everywhere in the 90s. So inline skating was fine because rollerblades were everywhere. So the inline skating, and it was a popular sport, especially in South America and the Latin American countries, in Europe. It was super popular. So we had the popularity. Here's the thing. There's something called USAC-RS. It's United States Amateur Confederation of Roller Skating. There's 3 disciplines for roller skating. There's speed skating, there's roller hockey, and there's artistic skating, which is kind of like figure skating on quad skates, like the old typical roller skates. But it's it's not exactly. You don't do like you throw your partner or anything like that. You basically kind of like trace like figure eights on a roller skating floor, and you can't not deviate, you can't bobble, you can't. Fun fact for Disney fans, you know who won nationals in that discipline? You've seen her, Stacy Aswad, top 7 Stacy. She won nationals as a artistic skater for USAC-RS. Anyway, so they had to get 3 disciplines. All 3, USAC said, if you're going to put this in the Olympics, all 3 disciplines have to be into the Olympics. Well, the Olympics didn't want artistic skating. It is watching paint dry. It is boring. I'm sorry, Stacy, but it is. It's super boring. It's way more boring than ice figure skating. Because you're just basically tracing like designs on a floor, like on one foot, and then you do it on one foot backwards, and you're judged by it's super not exciting. Well, so they didn't want all 3, so they didn't take any of them. But at the time, I was thinking, dude, I want to make the Olympics. I gave up playing baseball in college for this because I wanted to represent my country. And so you travel around, you do the circuit, you travel all these meets on the weekends. You go to Chicago, you go to Indianapolis, you go to Memphis, you go to wherever, Fort Smith, Arkansas, we went all over Oklahoma City, Wichita, Kansas. We drive everywhere to race these races. And, I just remember that it was one, you just, I forgot where I was going with this, but it was one of those things like, you just kept skating, when you're 20s, and it was easy. But now I couldn't imagine like coming back from that. So those were the days though. They were going to they definitely wanted inline skating super popular. They definitely wanted roller hockey because roller hockey was big back then too. A bunch of guys from our skating rink went down to Orlando, and they were on ESPN. What they did was they made it look on ESPN like they had a whole season of roller hockey, but they recorded the thing in a week, and then they just showed the games like spread out over like 2 months. The team from our rink was called the St. Louis Aztecs, and it was all these guys that I knew. I didn't play on it because I had other things going on, but I think I was too young maybe. But no, I was playing Legion baseball. But the thing was, like, they made it look on TV like these guys have been playing for 2 months, and they played the entire tournament like in a week because they played 2 games a day for like 7 days. And so it was wild. But I mean, back then roller hockey was huge. It was on ESPN. But yeah, those were the days. Anyway, so let's talk about today's topic. Today is National Library Day. I did a little research, and I wanted to talk about and get your feedback on memories from your school libraries as a kid. And so I talked about many times that I went to a private Christian school for 2nd to 6th grade. I don't really remember my kindergarten to 2nd grade school as Duchesne Elementary. I taught there eventually. It was in the district where I ended up teaching for years and years. But North County Christian School, where I went to 2nd through 6th grade, was kind of my formative years. And that's what I consider like my elementary school. And I remember that going to the library was such a big deal in elementary school, right? You went in there. I don't know if your library had like a distinct smell. I can still like when I say that, I can smell our library. And our library had it was very oh man, you had to be quiet in the library. It was no joke. We had this old librarian that would shh. I mean, if you tried to talk, you couldn't. It was bad. And also our library, it at our school shared a wall with the sanctuary of the church because our school was also in a church, a Nazarene church. And so on the one wall where the books were, there were stained glass windows. And so you could kind of look into the sanctuary, but it was through stained glass windows. I remember that. That was kind of cool. There was also a baptistry in the library. Like it was up on a platform. Now it was covered up while we were in there, but you could see like the big rectangle where they could take the lid off and, baptize somebody, I guess, on Sundays. I guess they didn't do it in the sanctuary. I never thought about that until just now, but there was a baptistry in our library. And what we would do is like it was kind of like on a stage. That's where the librarian would sit sometimes and read us books, and we'd sit on the floor kind of under it. That was kind of fun. But what I remember was you always got to check out like one or two books, and you got to look at the magazines. And I remember we got like Sports Illustrated. You got that Highlights magazine. Remember that Highlights magazine that had it was at my doctor's office all the time. I love that magazine. You can still get it on if you get Apple News. You can get that on your Apple News. But we'd look at I love Sports Illustrated because I was a sports guy. There were National Geographic. I loved looking at those. Just because, sometimes they'd have space stuff. The space shuttle program was hot and heavy in the 80s. Other places around the world. But it was just one of those things like you couldn't check out the magazines. So during your library time, you could look at the magazines, but you could check out one or two books. And back then, the way you would check out a book is you would actually take the little card in the front little pocket, like under the cover, and you would write your name, Mike Rallman. And then they would stamp it when you went to the front desk and, give you like 2 weeks to read it and you bring it back. And you could see everybody who checked out that book before you. That was kind of cool. So you could see like if your friend had had it before, you could see who had it like the last year, maybe 5 years, maybe somebody like an older sibling had that book. It was a different time because it was not computerized at all. I think it was kind of more of an honor system. I remember too, every year we spent so much time learning how to use the card catalog system and the Dewey Decimal System. That was a big deal. Even when I started teaching, I remember teaching my kids research skills as sixth graders, how to use the Dewey Decimal System and how to use the card catalog successfully to get through that. And I just remember like it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And just think about how antiquated that feels right now. Like I spend a decent amount of time with my sixth graders on research skills that are so far gone at this point. Remember, I taught for 17 years and I've been out of teaching for 6. So that was about 21 years ago. And I thought these were lifelong skills that I was giving them, not something that would come and go. These were things that, it wasn't just like a fact you need to know and you can move on. These are things that are going to use for the rest of their life to make their life whole. Learning how to research and like doing bibliography cards, citing resources. And the funny thing is I mean, think about where we are just in the last like 3 months with Chat GPT and all these like, all these other AI things that can make images. It's crazy. They can make music. It- the journey that you go on as a learner that sometimes starts in a library, which I really believe starts in a library because like I've told you on this show before, we lived right next to the public library growing up, and my mom and my sister would always go to the swimming pool all summer every day. We had season passes. But adjacent to the swimming pool was the public library, and I didn't like to swim, so I don't know, I was a nerd. I would go in the library and read books about tornadoes and computers and biographies, and I'd just sit in there in the air conditioning and just read. And I was happy as anything else. I didn't have to be out in the heat, and I hated swimming. So it's one of those things. I think that's where you're learning. Like you get curious about the world. You want to learn more, and I did that, and I think, schools do that too. Now, when I get back, so that's kind of my thoughts on the elementary school library. Now, I remember when I went to middle school, I went to Hazelwood Junior High for 7th and 8th grade. I just remember how big that library was because the whole school was bigger. It was a middle school compared to a little church school. And this was a public middle school. It was gigantic. And I only knew one kid when I went there, Ryan Rigby from my basketball team, my Corey League basketball team. But it was 2 stories and it had so many books and it had computers and it had racks and racks of magazines. And it was just like, had couches. It was like really cool. It was like set up with a place where you wanted to hang out. And I remember that, if you got the opportunity, you would want to go to that library and just hang out. And I remember hanging out there, if you got your work done, you could ask to go down there. And I just remember it was a cool place to go. It was very comfortable and it was very neat because it's like multi-level, big windows, very, very nice. But then in high school, I don't ever remember going to the library very much in high school. We had a nice library. They called it in high school, they called ours the IMC, Instructional Media Center. And it was at the very end of C Hall, I believe. And you would go there occasionally, but literally do not remember going to the library much. And I mean, I was in National Honor Society. I worked hard. I got good grades, but I just don't remember going there much, which is kind of ironic because, I was one of the, kids that worked hard in academics, but I just don't ever remember being in there much. I know they had computers because I went in there and printed out some things occasionally, and I used the computers sometimes. And I checked out books every once in a while because sometimes the whole class would go for this and that. But I don't have many memories of high school in the library. But I remember they called it the Instructional Media Center because it was never labeled as the library. Because I remember when I first went to the school, I went to Hazelwood Central. On the map it said IMC. I had no idea what IMC was. What what's IMC? It's a gigantic room at the end of C Hall. And then somebody's like, yeah, it's a library. It's a fancy name. So anyway, here's what I want to get from you. What are your memories of your school library? Is it a place you love to go? Did your class go there, on a schedule like once a week? We always did. We went once a week, checked out books, did book reports, all that stuff. And I love taking my kids to the library as a teacher. I love that because I wanted my kids to have a love of learning and a love of reading. And I thought that was one of the most important hours of the week because they got to pick a book. They could do a biography, they could do fiction. You could get what you want. And I didn't discourage kids to look at magazines because magazines is totally, when I think about how I read right now, I'm a magazine reader. I look at Apple News, I read Twitter. I'm always reading short bits of news. I'm never reading a full book anymore. I'm reading this, that, and the other, but I read a lot in a day. But I mean, our society has changed so crazily over the last little bit. I would never discourage a kid from reading a magazine, but back in my day, they did. Oh no, you got to read a 300-page biography, if you want to get smart. I don't believe that anymore. I think nonfiction, you know, of all kinds can really help you out. I think nonfiction is vital to success nowadays. It's not just fiction. We were fed a lot of fiction, but nonfiction is kind of what's going to get you where you need to be. And you also need to be able to look at bias and stuff like that. Who wrote this? Why did they write it? What's the slant? And kind of thing like that. So anyway, what are your thoughts on your library experience growing up? Schools? You can talk about your community library because I love that we're all from different places in the world, but I want to hear about it for next week's show because I love this stuff. I love being able to make these connections all together as a community. All right. Well, I'm going to jump out of here. Hope you're having a great week. Thank you so much for being a part of my family. I love you guys. And I thank you for supporting the Be Our Guest podcast. Thank you for allowing me to do what I love. And I hope you always enjoy the shows. I'll always promise to give you my best effort every show, and we'll keep this train going as far as we can. So you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.